Ryan sat in his penthouse apartment, a space adorned with the finest decor money could buy. The floor-to-ceiling windows framed a breathtaking view of the city skyline, where skyscrapers pierced the clouds and bustling streets thrummed with life below. Yet, despite the luxury surrounding him, a profound emptiness gnawed at his heart. He leaned back in his leather chair, the soft creaking of the upholstery echoing in the silence. His gaze drifted outside, but the view offered no solace. It was just a reminder of how isolated he felt. The vibrant city that once brought him exhilaration now felt cold and distant. As he sipped his scotch, the amber liquid swirling in the glass, Ryan recalled a recent charity event he had attended. It was a lavish affair, filled with the elite of society, exchanging hollow pleasantries and empty compliments. Yet, amidst the glittering crowd, one person had managed to pierce through the superficiality: Sarah. Her laughter had been bright and genuine, a melody that contrasted sharply with the forced laughter of the other attendees. Ryan had found himself captivated by her warmth, a stark contrast to the polished veneer of the elite. She had been volunteering at the event, organizing donations for the homeless, her hands deftly sorting through clothing and food. As he watched her, he noticed how she interacted with everyone, the way she listened, her eyes sparkling with empathy, and how she smiled, making each person feel seen and valued. "Why do you do this?" he had asked her, genuinely intrigued. Sarah had looked up from the pile of donations, her brow furrowing slightly. "Because everyone deserves a second chance, don't you think? I've seen too many people fall through the cracks, and I can't just stand by and watch." Her words had struck a chord deep within him, reverberating through the hollowness he had grown accustomed to. He remembered nodding, but inside, a storm of confusion raged. What did it mean to truly care for someone? Ryan had spent years building his empire, acquiring wealth, and yet here he was, feeling emptier than ever. Determined to understand this elusive concept of love and connection, Ryan knew he had to make a change. He needed to step outside the bubble of his privileged life and experience the world from a different perspective. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. He had come to a decision. He would disguise himself as a beggar, immersing himself in a reality he had long ignored. In preparation, Ryan stood in front of the mirror in his expansive bathroom, rubbing his hand over his freshly shaven head. The reflection staring back at him was unrecognizable. He donned a baggy, tattered coat that hung off his shoulders like a discarded rag. His designer jeans were replaced by worn-out pants that had seen better days. He looked like a ghost of his former self, and for the first time in years, he felt a thrill of nervous excitement coursing through him. "What if this is a mistake?" he whispered to his reflection, the uncertainty gnawing at his insides. But the thought of Sarah brought him back to focus. He had to know more about her, about the compassion that radiated from her like a beacon. He tucked a makeshift sign into his pocket, one that read, "Hungry and homeless. Anything helps." It felt surreal, and yet he was ready to step into his new role, ready to uncover the truths that lay beneath the surface of his privileged existence. As he stepped out of his building, the cool air hit him like a slap, invigorating and sobering. He felt exposed, vulnerable, and yet there was an underlying thrill coursing through him. The streets were alive with people, all bustling about their daily routines, oblivious to the inner turmoil he felt. He wandered the busy sidewalks, observing the world through a different lens. The laughter of children playing in the park, the hurried footsteps of professionals heading to their offices, and the distant sounds of a street musician strumming a guitar all painted a vivid picture of life. But as he approached the corner of an alley, he spotted something that made his heart skip a beat. There stood Sarah, her back to him, sharing a sandwich with an elderly man who looked worn by the weight of the world. Ryan's breath hitched in his throat as he watched her kneel beside him, her hands gently offering food with a smile that could melt the coldest of hearts. "Here you go, sir. I hope you like it," she said, her voice soft and genuine. The man looked up, surprise etched on his face. "Thank you, young lady. You're an angel." "No, just someone who cares," she replied, her smile unwavering as she handed him a bottle of water. Ryan felt a rush of emotions: admiration, awe, and an overwhelming sense of guilt. Here was a woman who truly embodied kindness, who chose to see others in their struggles, while he had been so blinded by his own wealth that he had forgotten the essence of humanity. As Sarah continued to chat with the man, Ryan's heart raced. He wanted to approach her, to say something, but fear gripped him. What would he say? How could he reveal that he was not just a beggar, but a millionaire hiding from his own reality? He took a step back, watching her compassion unfold like a beautiful tapestry. With each moment, he felt his resolve strengthening. This venture was not just about understanding love, it was about discovering who he was beneath the layers of wealth and status. As the elderly man finished his meal, Sarah stood up, brushing off her hands. "Take care of yourself, okay? There are people who care about you," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Ryan standing there, overwhelmed by the depth of her kindness. He felt an inexplicable connection to her, a yearning to know more, to understand her world and perhaps find a piece of himself in it. As he continued to water the streets, Ryan knew he was on the brink of something profound. The hum of the city around him faded into the background, replaced by the beating of his heart. He had taken the first step into a journey that could change everything. The question was, could he face the truths he was about to uncover? Would he have the courage to embrace the vulnerability that came with seeking true love? With each step, he felt the weight of his past begin to lift, replaced by a glimmer of hope for the future. Little did he know that the road ahead would not only challenge his perceptions of wealth and happiness, but would also lead him to the very heart of true love. Ryan, under the guise of Mike, approached Sarah with a mixture of trepidation and excitement. The streets felt alive with the sounds of the city, yet the essence of his surroundings was entirely foreign to him. He had spent years cocooned in the luxury of his penthouse, surrounded by opulence, but devoid of genuine connection. Today, however, he was determined to breach that divide, even if it meant masquerading as a beggar. "Hey there, miss," he began, his voice slightly gravelly from the cold wind that whipped through the alley. He had positioned himself near the diner where Sarah worked, hoping she would recognize him. Sarah looked up, her kind eyes widening with surprise, as she saw the disheveled figure standing before her. "Oh, you're that man from before, right?" She glanced around, ensuring no one else was watching, before stepping closer. "You look different." Ryan managed a sheepish smile, feeling the weight of his disguise. "Yeah, it's been a rough few days. Just trying to get by," he replied, adopting an air of vulnerability. "I could really use a bite to eat." Without hesitation, Sarah reached into her bag. "I just made a sandwich." "It's not much, but it's fresh," she said, pulling out a simple ham and cheese sandwich wrapped in paper. Offering it to him, her expression was one of pure compassion. "Thank you," Ryan said, accepting the food with gratitude. He took a bite, savoring the taste, not just because he was hungry, but because it represented something he had long been missing: human connection. "You really care about people, don't you?" he asked, trying to gauge her outlook on life. She shrugged, her cheeks flushed from the cold air. "I try. Life's hard for many, and we have to look out for each other, you know? Every little bit helps." Her voice was soft but firm, reflecting the resilience that Ryan found captivating. "Do you have a family?" Ryan inquired, genuinely curious about her life beyond the diner. Sarah nodded, her eyes momentarily clouded with concern. "I have a younger brother. He's in school, and I work doubles at the diner to make ends meet. I just want to make sure he has a better life than I did," she said, her gaze drifting as if she were lost in thought. Ryan's heart ached at her words. Here she was, sacrificing her own comfort for the sake of another. "That's really admirable," he said. "What do you dream of doing? I mean, if you could do anything." She chuckled softly, the sound lighting the mood. "Oh, I have dreams, but they feel so far away sometimes. I'd love to open a non-profit one day, to help people who are struggling like I do. There are so many out there who need a hand up, not a handout." "Well," Ryan replied, completely taken aback by her ambition. "That's incredible." He watched her eyes sparkle with passion. This was a woman who had purpose, who cared deeply for others. "What's stopping you?" he asked, leaning in slightly. "Money, mostly," she admitted, her smile fading a little. "It's hard to save when you're barely making rent." She sighed, glancing down at the ground. "But I won't give up. I can't." Ryan felt a surge of admiration for her tenacity. He had spent a lifetime acquiring wealth, yet here was someone who valued kindness and community over the superficial pleasures that money could buy. "I believe in you," he said, surprising himself with the sincerity of his words. "You'll get there. I can feel it." "Thanks, Mike," she said, her smile returning, brighter than before. "You're really sweet. You know, you remind me of someone I used to know, a guy who had a heart of gold." Ryan's chest tightened at her words. "What happened to him?" he asked, intrigued. She paused, her expression becoming wistful. "He left town a while back. I guess he was looking for something more, like we all are." Her eyes locked onto his, and for a fleeting moment, Ryan felt a connection that transcended their circumstances. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the street, Ryan knew he had to see her again. They parted ways reluctantly, but not before Sarah handed him another sandwich. "Just in case you get hungry later," she said, her eyes twinkling with kindness. The following days rolled into a routine. Ryan returned to the diner, meeting Sarah at the same spot, sharing stories and laughter. He learned more about her life, her struggles, and her dreams. Each encounter left him more enamored, more aware of the depth and warmth within her heart. "Mike, I've been thinking," she said one afternoon, her brow furrowing in thought. "I want to start a community garden. It could help feed people, you know." "A garden? That's a brilliant idea," Ryan exclaimed, his heart racing at her enthusiasm. "Really? You think so?" Sarah's eyes lit up with hope. "Absolutely. I'd love to help you get it off the ground," he offered, feeling a surge of desire to support her dreams, even if he was still playing the role of a beggar. "That would be amazing. I just need to find a plot of land and some volunteers," she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "But I'm not sure where to start." Ryan thought for a moment. "Maybe I can help you look around. I know a few people who might be able to assist. They're involved in community projects, and they could have some leads." The word slipped out before he could reconsider. The last thing he wanted was to overstep his rule, but the thought of helping her was intoxicating. "I'd appreciate that more than you know," she replied, her smile brightening his day. "You're really proving to be a good friend, Mike." Friend. The word echoed in Ryan's mind, a bittersweet reminder of the chasm between their realities. He had grown close to her, but the longer he hid his true identity, the more anxious he became. Each day spent in her presence revealed the sincerity of her heart, and each conversation only deepened his fear of the inevitable revelation. Days turned into weeks, and with each encounter, Ryan found himself torn between his growing affection for Sarah and the weight of his deception. He watched her interact with others, her laughter contagious, her kindness evident. Whether it was offering a warm smile to an elderly neighbor or helping a single mother with her groceries, Sarah was a beacon of compassion. One chilly afternoon, as they sat on a park bench, Sarah shared her thoughts on love. "You know, I think love is about sacrifice," she said, her voice thoughtful. "It's about putting someone else's needs before your own and being there for them when it matters most." Ryan felt his heart race at her words. "That's a beautiful way to look at it," he said, trying to mask the internal conflict brewing within him. "But isn't it also about trust?" "Definitely," Sarah agreed. "Trust is essential. Without it, love can't flourish." She turned to him, her gaze piercing. "Do you trust me, Mike?" "Of course," he replied, though he felt a pang of guilt gnawing at him. He wanted to be honest, to reveal his true self, but fear held him captive. Would she still see him as the man she had come to know, or would the revelation shatter the bond they had formed? As they continued talking, Ryan realized that with each small act of kindness he witnessed in Sarah, he was beginning to redefine his own understanding of wealth. It wasn't the money in his bank account that mattered. It was the richness of the heart, the connections made, and the love shared. Yet, even as his admiration for Sarah deepened, the looming secret of his identity hung over him like a dark cloud. Each day, he wrestled with the fear of losing her, a fear that threatened to unravel everything he had come to cherish. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the city, Ryan felt an unsettling mix of emotions swirling within him. He sat on a worn bench in the park, his disguise as Mike weighing heavily on him. The sound of children laughing in the distance, and the soft rustle of leaves seemed to mock his internal conflict. He had come to this park countless times as a millionaire, but now, beneath the guise of a beggar, he felt more alive yet more conflicted than ever. His thoughts drifted to Sarah. Each interaction with her felt like a revelation, unraveling layers of himself that he hadn't known existed. The way she selflessly cared for others, her laughter that echoed like music, and her dreams that sparkled in her eyes, everything about her captivated him. But alongside that admiration grew a gnawing fear. What would happen if she learned the truth about him? Would she still see him as the man she had come to know? Or would he become just another wealthy player in a game he no longer wanted to be a part of? With a sigh, Ryan pulled out his phone, glancing at the screen to see a message from his best friend, Alex. They had been exchanging texts throughout his secret venture, and Ryan felt a sense of comfort in sharing his struggles with someone who understood his world. He quickly typed a response, his fingers hesitating over the keys as he weighed his words carefully. Ryan ***. "I'm falling for her, Alex. But I'm terrified. What if she finds out I'm not who I say I am? I can't bear the thought of losing her." A moment passed before Alex's reply flashed on the screen. Alex ***. "You've got to tell her, man. Secrets have a way of coming out. And if she really loves you, it won't matter where you came from." Ryan frowned at the text, his heart racing. He knew Alex was right. Honesty was crucial in any relationship. Yet the fear of rejection loomed large, tying knots in his stomach. He envisioned the moment Sarah would look at him, her eyes filled with betrayal and disappointment. Could he risk that? As he mulled over his thoughts, he heard a familiar voice calling out, breaking his reverie. "Mike! There you are!" It was Sarah, her radiant smile lighting up the dimming park. She approached with a small bag in hand, her cheeks flushed from the evening chill and the joy of seeing him. "Hey, Sarah," he replied, forcing a smile to mask his turmoil. She plopped down on the bench beside him, her excitement palpable. "I brought you something. It's not much, just some leftovers from the diner, but I thought you might like it." She opened the bag to reveal a neatly wrapped sandwich and a piece of fruit. Ryan's heart swelled at her thoughtfulness. "You didn't have to do that," he said, genuinely touched. "I wanted to. You're not just some stranger to me, Mike. You're my friend." Her eyes sparkled with sincerity, and Ryan felt the weight of her words pressing against the walls he had built around himself. "I appreciate it, really," he said, taking the food from her. As he unwrapped the sandwich, a wave of guilt washed over him. Here he was, accepting kindness from a woman who had so little to give, while he hid the truth of his wealth. Sarah shifted in her seat, her expression growing serious. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," Ryan replied, his heart racing. "Why do you spend so much time here? I mean, I know you're, well, living out here, but there has to be more to it, right?" Ryan hesitated, the urge to reveal his true self battling against his instinct to protect the fragile bond they had formed. "I guess I just enjoy the people," he said finally. "There's a certain honesty here, People are real, and they don't hide who they are." Sarah nodded, her brow furrowing slightly. "I get that. It's refreshing. I feel like I can be myself around you too. I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not." "Exactly." Ryan's heart ached at the thought of losing this connection. "You're one of the most genuine people I know." Sarah smiled softly, her gaze drifting to the ground. "I've had to learn to be. Life hasn't been easy for me. I grew up in a rough neighborhood, and my family struggled for everything." Ryan listened intently, captivated by her story. "What was it like?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. "It was tough," she admitted, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "My parents worked multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. I watched them sacrifice everything for my brother and me. I promised myself that I would do better, that I would help others like them when I could." Her eyes sparkled with determination, and Ryan felt inspired. "Help others?" he echoed, intrigued. Sarah nodded. "I dream of starting a non-profit one day, to help the homeless and those in need. I want to create a shelter where people can find support and resources to get back on their feet. It's my way of giving back." The passion in her voice ignited something within Ryan. He couldn't help but admire her resilience and ambition. "That's incredible, Sarah. You would make a difference in so many lives." "Thanks, Mike," she said, her tone softening. "But I know it's a long shot. I'm just a waitress at a diner, and I barely make enough to get by. Sometimes it feels like an impossible dream." Ryan's heart ached for her, and he wished more than anything that he could help her realize that dream. But the weight of his deception loomed over him like a dark cloud. How could he support her without revealing his true identity? "Don't give up on your dreams," he urged gently. "You never know what opportunities might come your way." She looked at him, her expression hopeful yet pensive. "Maybe you're right. I just have to keep believing in myself, even when it feels hopeless." They shared a moment of silence, the warmth of their connection enveloping them like a comforting blanket. Ryan's mind raced with thoughts of how he could assist her without breaking her trust. But just as he began to formulate a plan, Sarah's voice broke through the stillness. "Can I tell you something, Mike? You've been such a light in my life these past few weeks. I looked forward to our talks more than you know." Her words wrapped around Ryan's heart, filling him with a bittersweet mixture of joy and despair. "I feel the same way," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. As they sat together, bathed in the fading light of the evening, Ryan knew he was at a crossroads. He could continue to hide behind the mask he had created, or he could take a leap of faith and embrace the vulnerability that true love demanded. But as the shadows of night began to creep in, he felt the weight of his choice pressing down on him, heavy and unyielding. In the depths of his heart, he hoped that whatever path he chose would lead him closer to Sarah, to the love he yearned for but feared to claim. Ryan watched from the shadows of the alley as Sarah wrestled with the hood of her old, rusted car. The engine had sputtered and died on her way home from the diner, leaving her stranded on the side of the road. He felt a pang of helplessness as he observed her frustration. Her hands were smeared with grease, and her brow was furrowed in concentration as she attempted to diagnose the problem. The sight tugged at his heartstrings, a stark reminder of the struggle she faced daily. "Come on, you old piece of junk," Sarah muttered to herself, shaking her head in disbelief. Not today. Ryan could hear the hint of desperation in her voice, and it stung more than he expected. He longed to rush to her side, to offer help, but the fear of exposing his true identity held him back. He had grown so close to her, and yet the truth loomed over him like a dark cloud, threatening to rain on their blossoming relationship. She pulled out her phone and glanced at it, then sighed deeply, tucking it back into her pocket. Ryan noticed her shoulders slump in defeat. It occurred to him that she might miss work tomorrow, and that could put a serious dent in her already precarious finances. The thought of her struggling made his heart ache. He couldn't stand by and do nothing. As he contemplated his options, he thought of his wealth, of the resources he could tap into effortlessly. But how could he help without revealing himself? The irony of his situation was not lost on him. A millionaire hiding in the shadows, wanting to lend a hand to a woman who inspired him more than anyone else ever had. Ryan took a deep breath, steeling himself. He decided then that he would help her, but he would do it in a way that preserved the honesty between them. He pulled out his phone and quickly typed a message to a trusted mechanic he knew, someone who would be able to fix Sarah's car without gouging her for every penny. It was a simple request. "Can you help a friend in need? Car broke down on Maple Street. Urgent." After hitting send, he felt a flicker of hope, but it quickly turned into anxiety. What if she found out? What if the mechanic asked too many questions? He was already tangled in a web of lies, and this could complicate things further. But then he thought of Sarah, her smile, her dreams, and the kindness she extended to everyone, even to him, a beggar named Mike. He shook his head, dismissing his fears. She deserved this. As the minutes ticked by, Ryan waited in the shadows, keeping watch over her. He felt a mix of admiration and sorrow as he saw her attempts to coax the car back to life, her persistence shining through her frustration. He knew that her car represented more than just a mode of transportation. It was a lifeline, a connection to her job, her dreams, her family. The weight of that realization deepened his resolve. Finally, his phone buzzed with a message from the mechanic. "I can be there in 30 minutes. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything." Relief washed over Ryan, but it was accompanied by a sense of unease. Would Sarah believe that help had come from just a kind stranger? Or would she know that someone had intervened on her behalf? He decided to leave her a note, something small but encouraging, just to let her know that she wasn't alone. He rummaged through his pockets and found a crumpled piece of paper and a pen. He wrote quickly, pouring his heart into the few words he had. "Dear Sarah, sometimes life throws us challenges, but remember, you are never alone. Help is on the way. Keep your chin up. A friend." With the note in hand, he carefully placed it under the windshield wiper of her car, ensuring that it would be the first thing she would see when she returned. He stepped back into the shadows, his heart pounding. There was something exhilarating about this act of kindness, but it was also terrifying. How would she react? Would she be grateful or suspicious? As he stood there, lost in thought, he heard the familiar sound of footsteps approaching. It was Sarah, returning with a defeated expression on her face. Ryan's heart sank. She looked at her car, her shoulders slumping even further when she saw that the hood was still up and the engine silent. "Great," she said, her voice heavy with disappointment. "Just great." She leaned against the side of the car, her eyes glossing over as if she were fighting back tears. Ryan felt a surge of sympathy, wishing he could comfort her, to let her know that hope was, in fact, on the way. Then, as if by fate, he saw headlights in the distance. The mechanic's truck pulled up beside her, and Ryan's heart raced with anticipation. He stepped further back, watching as the mechanic emerged, a friendly smile on his face. He approached Sarah, who was now looking at him with curiosity mixed with skepticism. "Hey there. I was called in to help with this beauty," he said, gesturing to the car. "Mind if I take a look?" Sarah's expression shifted from doubt to surprise, and Ryan couldn't help but smile at the relief that washed over her. "You're here to help?" she asked, her voice trembling with hope. "Absolutely. Let's see what we can do," the mechanic replied, kneeling beside the engine and popping the hood completely open. As they worked together, Ryan felt a sense of warmth bloom in his chest. He wanted to step forward and reveal himself, to share his part in this small miracle, but he stayed rooted in place, content to watch from a distance. He listened to their conversation, the mechanic explaining various parts of the engine while Sarah asked questions, her curiosity rekindling the spark of hope within her. "Thank you so much for being here," she said, her voice soft and sincere. "I didn't know what I was going to do." "Don't mention it," the mechanic replied, grinning. "We all need a little help sometimes, right?" Ryan could see the genuine gratitude in her eyes, and it made his heart swell. He marveled at the way she interacted with the mechanic, her kindness shining through even in a moment of vulnerability. She was everything he admired, resilient, compassionate, and full of life. Once, the mechanic determined that the problem was minor, something easily fixable. Ryan felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Just a loose wire," the mechanic said, tightening a few screws. "You'll be back on the road in no time." "Really? That's amazing," Sarah exclaimed, her eyes lighting up with joy. "I can't believe it's nothing serious." "Yeah, it's usually the little things that trip us up," the mechanic replied, closing the hood and wiping his hands on a rag. "You'll be good to go, but I recommend giving her a good checkup soon." As Sarah thanked him profusely, Ryan took a step back, his heart heavy with emotions he couldn't name. She was so full of life, so grateful for this small act of kindness, and yet here he was, hiding in the shadows, unable to reveal himself. The weight of his dissection felt more burdensome than ever. Later that evening, Ryan found himself in the alley where they had first met. He leaned against the wall, lost in thought, as the cool night air enveloped him. He thought about everything that had transpired, about Sarah's resilience and her dreams, and the way she lit up even in the face of adversity. The night deepened, and he heard footsteps approaching. It was Sarah again, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the streetlights. She seemed to be searching for something or someone. Ryan's heart raced as she wandered closer, her eyes scanning the alley. "Mike?" she called softly, her voice carrying through the night. "Are you there?" Ryan stepped into the light, feeling a mix of excitement and dread. "I'm here," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. Sarah turned to him, her expression shifting from surprise to relief. "I didn't think I'd find you here. I was just, well, I wanted to talk about today." "Yeah?" Ryan asked, leaning against the wall, trying to gauge her mood. "What did you think?" "It was incredible," she said, her eyes sparkling. "I can't believe someone helped me out of the blue like that. It just gives me hope, you know." Ryan nodded, feeling a swell of pride that he had played a part in her happiness, even if she didn't know it was him. "It's amazing how people can come together when you least expect it." "Exactly. There's so much kindness in the world, it's just sometimes hard to see it when you're in the thick of it." She paused, regarding him with an intensity that made his heart race. "Do you believe in that? In kindness?" "Absolutely," he replied, his voice earnest. "I think it's one of the most powerful forces we have." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. Ryan felt a connection with her that ran deeper than anything he had ever known. It was in her eyes, the way she spoke about her dreams, her struggles, and her unwavering belief in goodness. "Mike," she said finally, breaking the silence, I've been thinking a lot about my dreams lately. I want to start that nonprofit to help the homeless. And I really think I can do it, but it scares me. What if I fail? Ryan's heart ached for her. Ryan sat on the cold, hard pavement, leaning against a brick wall in the alley where he first met Sarah. The sun had dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced around him. He watched the world go by, people rushing past him, many of whom he recognized from his former life of luxury. They seemed oblivious to the struggles of those around them, including him, the beggar named Mike. A mix of exhaustion and self-reflection washed over him as he contemplated the choices he had made. The thought of revealing his true identity to Sarah gnawed at him like a persistent itch he couldn't scratch. He had come to value their connection more than he ever thought possible, and each moment spent with her felt like a precious gift. Yet, the weight of his deception loomed large. What if she despised him for lying? What if her feelings were merely a reflection of the kindness he had masqueraded behind? Ryan felt trapped in a web of his own making, torn between the desire to be honest and the fear of losing the one person who had shown him the true meaning of compassion. "Hey, Mike!" Sarah's voice rang out, breaking through his thoughts. She approached him with a warm smile, a paper bag in hand. "I brought you a little something. Figured you could use a treat today." Ryan's heart swelled at her kindness. "You didn't have to do that, Sarah," he replied, accepting the bag. He peeked inside to find a sandwich and an apple, neatly wrapped. "This is more than enough. Just a small gesture." She sat down beside him, her presence instantly bragging the dim alley. "How was your day?" Ryan took a moment to gather his thoughts. Same old, same old. You know how it is." He tried to sound casual, but the truth was, every day without revealing himself felt like a weight pressing down on him. "How about you? How's work?" "Oh, it's been hectic," she said, her eyes sparkling with passion. "We had a rush at the diner today, and I swear, I'd never seen so many coffee cups in my life. But you know what? It felt good to keep busy. It takes my mind off things." "What things?" Ryan asked, genuinely curious. She hesitated for a moment, looking down at her hands, which were callous from years of hard work. "Just life, I guess. Sometimes it feels overwhelming. But I try to stay focused on what I can control." Ryan nodded, feeling the urge to open up, to share his own burdens, but the fear of what that would mean stalked him. "You have such a strong spirit, Sarah. I admire that." "Thanks, Mike." Her smile was infectious, and he couldn't help but return it. "I'd just learned that if I don't look forward, I'll get stuck in the past. And I can't afford to do that, not with everything going on." "What's going on?" He probed gently, sensing there was more beneath the surface. Her expression shifted, the weight of unspoken worry shadowing her face. "I just received a call from my brother. Mom isn't doing well. They think it might be something serious." Her voice trembled slightly, and Ryan's heart ached for her. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. That must be really hard," he said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Yeah, it is," she replied, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I've been trying to be strong for everyone, but it's tough. I don't know how I'll manage everything if she gets worse." Ryan felt a surge of empathy. He wanted to do something, anything, to ease her burden, but he felt powerless, knowing that revealing his identity would change everything. Instead, he leaned closer, offering her a sense of solidarity. "You're not alone in this. I'm here for you, okay? Whatever you need." "Thank you, Mike. That means a lot," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're really a good person, you know that?" He chuckled softly, masking his turmoil. "I'm just trying to do my part." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared struggles hanging in the air. Ryan wished he could take away her pain, but all he could offer was his presence. He reached into the paper bag and pulled out the apple, handing it to her. "Here, eat this. You need your strength." Sarah accepted it gratefully, taking a bite and savoring the sweet and tart flavor. "You always know how to make me smile," she said, her eyes lighting up for a moment before the shadows returned. "Just trying to keep your spirits up," he replied, feeling a pang of guilt for not being honest. He wished he could tell her that he had the means to help her mother, to ease her financial burdens, but every time he opened his mouth to speak the truth, the words got stuck in his throat. "Sometimes, I wish I could just escape from all of this," Sarah said suddenly, her voice tinged with frustration. "Just for a little while. You know what I mean? What would you do?" Ryan asked, intrigued. "I don't know," she admitted, her brow furrowing. "Maybe travel? See the world? I've always dreamed of going to the beach, just sitting by the ocean and letting the waves wash over me. I want to feel free." Ryan's heart sank at the thought of the life she dreamed of, one that he could easily provide with just a fraction of his wealth. "That sounds amazing. You deserve it." "Yeah, but it feels so far away," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't even think about that right now with everything going on with Mom." Ryan felt a deep longing to be the one to give her that freedom, to help her realize her dreams. He wanted to be her support, but every moment he spent with her, while hiding the truth, felt like a betrayal. The conflict within him intensified, and he knew he had to make a choice soon. "Sarah," he began, his voice steady yet soft. Before he could finish, she interrupted, her expression shifting to one of concern. "Mike, are you okay? You look a little pale." "I'm fine," he lied, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about how strong you are. I admire that about you." She looked at him with an intensity that made his heart race. "You really mean that?" "Absolutely," he said, feeling the sincerity of his words. "You have a light about you that shines even in the darkest times. It's inspiring." "Thanks, Mike. I needed to hear that." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and Ryan felt a rush of warmth. In that moment, he wished he could freeze time, to keep her close forever. But the truth hung over him like a storm cloud, threatening to unleash its fury. As they sat quietly together, Ryan made a silent promise to himself. He would find a way to support Sarah, to be there for her through her struggles. But he also knew that he couldn't hide from the truth forever. The longer he waited to reveal who he truly was, the greater the risk of losing her trust. He felt a sense of urgency growing within him, a need to break free from the chains of deception. "Sarah," he said finally, his heart pounding in his chest, "I need to tell you something important." She looked up at him, her eyes wide with curiosity and concern. "What is it, Mike?" He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on him. I just want you to know that I care about you deeply." "Of course," she replied, her brow furrowing slightly. "I care about you too." "No, I mean," Ryan's voice faltered, caught in the crossfire of emotions. "I care about you in a way that goes beyond friendship." Her eyes softened, and he could see the spark of hope flickering within them. "Really?" "Yes," he said, his voice gaining strength. "But there's something else, something I need to tell you about myself." At that moment, he realized that he stood in a crossroads. The path ahead was unclear, but he knew he couldn't keep running from the truth. He had to choose love, honesty, and vulnerability over fear. As Sarah looked at him with anticipation, Ryan felt an overwhelming sense of resolve forming within him. He would find a way to bridge the gap between their worlds, to show her that true wealth lay not in the facade of his fortune, but in the depth of their connection. Ryan stood at the entrance of the park, his heart pounding in his chest like a drum. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the landscape, illuminating the vibrant greens of the grass and the vibrant colors of the flowers. It was here, in this serene environment, that he had first shared an honest conversation with Sarah, a moment that had changed the course of his life. He had chosen this spot to reveal his true identity, hoping the beauty around them would ease the tension of his confession. He glanced at Sarah, sitting on a bench, her expression a mix of hope and uncertainty. She gazed at the ground, lost in thought, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her worn-out sweater. Ryan took a deep breath, steeling himself for the moment. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, her phone rang, shattering the fragile silence. "Hello?" Sarah answered, her voice subtly tense. Ryan watched as her face drained of color, the phone pressed tightly to her ear. "What do you mean? Is she?" Her voice broke, and tears welled up in her eyes. Ryan felt his heart twist at the sight. He could only imagine the news she was receiving. Her mother's health had been fragile, and he had hoped for better updates than this. "Okay, I'll be right there," she said, before ending the call abruptly. Her hands trembled as she lowered the phone, and Ryan could see the pain etched across her features. "Sarah," he began, but she cut him off, standing up hurriedly, her thoughts racing. "I have to go, Ryan. My mom, she needs me." Ryan stood, feeling helpless. "I can drive you. Let me help." "No, I can't," she replied, her voice strained. "I need to be there. I can't think about anything else right now." Without waiting for his response, she turned and hurried away, her footsteps quickening as she ventured toward the park's exit. Watching her go, Ryan felt a surge of despair. He wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but he also understood that this moment wasn't about him. She was losing her anchor, and he couldn't impose his feelings onto her turbulent world. Yet, he felt a fire ignite within him, a desire to help her in any way he could. As he stood there, a plan began to form in his mind. He pulled out his phone, his fingers flying over the screen as he contacted a trusted friend in the medical field. "I need your help," he typed. "It's urgent." He explained Sarah's situation in a flurry of messages, outlining everything he could think of, from financial assistance to any medical resources that could ease her family's burden. Ryan knew that he had the means to make a difference, and for the first time, his wealth felt like a tool for good rather than a barrier to authentic connection. He could help Sarah without revealing his identity. Perhaps this was the moment he could truly show her that love was more than words, it was action and sacrifice. After a few tense moments, his friend replied, affirming that they could provide immediate assistance. "I'll be at the hospital in 30 minutes. We'll take care of everything," the message read. Relief washed over Ryan, but his heart still ached for Sarah. With a sense of urgency, he made his way to the hospital, his heart racing with anticipation and fear. He arrived just as Sarah was entering, her face a mask of worry. He wanted to call out to her, to assure her that everything would be all right, but he held back. This was her moment, and he needed to respect her space. Instead, he followed her inside, keeping a respectful distance while searching for a way to help without being seen. As he wandered through the sterile hallways, he spotted a nurse he recognized from his previous visits. "Excuse me." He approached her, his voice calm but firm. "Can you tell me where I can find Mrs. Thompson?" The nurse looked at him curiously. "Are you family?" "I'm a friend," he replied, trying to sound as genuine as possible. She nodded and pointed him in the right direction, but before he could thank her, he saw Sarah again, sitting in the waiting area with her head in her hands. She looked lost, and his heart broke for her. He wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but he knew that revealing himself now would only complicate things. Instead, he slipped away and made his way to the medical staff, discreetly ensuring that Sarah's mother would receive the best care possible. He arranged for a private room, additional tests, and even a consultation with the best specialists. He didn't want Sarah to worry about anything except being there for her mother. After a while, he returned to the waiting area, where Sarah was still sitting, her face streaked with tears. He approached cautiously, unsure of how to break the silence. "Sarah," he said softly, kneeling beside her, "I'm here." She looked up, her eyes red and puffy. "I don't know what I'm going to do, Ryan. She's everything to me. If I lose her—" Her voice trailed off as she began to cry. Ryan reached out, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You won't lose her. I promise." "How can you be so sure?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "Because you're strong. You've faced so much already," he assured her, trying to inject hope into her despair. "And you're not alone in this. You have people who care about you." She looked up at him, searching his eyes for sincerity, and for a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of recognition. "Ryan, I feel so lost," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I know. But let's take this one step at a time. Just be with her. That's what matters most right now." "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what I would do without you." He opened his mouth to respond, to finally tell her the truth, to reveal all the ways he had tried to support her. But before he could, she leaned in closer, her eyes searching his. "You've been my angel through all of this, Ryan. I just wish I knew who you really were." His heart raced. This was it. The moment he had been dreading and yearning for all at once. He took a deep breath, ready to unveil the truth that had been weighing heavily on him. "Sarah, But she cut him off, her expression shifting. "I knew you were more than you said. I've known for a while now." "What?" he stammered, momentarily stunned. "I suspected it the first time we talked. Your kindness, your insights, the way you care. It's not something you find easily. You've been testing me, haven't you?" Ryan's breath caught in his throat, the weight of her words crashing down on him. "I wasn't trying to deceive you. I just wanted to understand what true love felt like." Tears filled her eyes as she smiled through her sadness. "And you've shown me that love is not just about wealth or status. It's about being there for each other, no matter what." With that, she leaned in, wrapping her arms around him tightly. Ryan held her close, feeling the warmth of her body against his, the connection they shared deepening in that fleeting moment. "I was so afraid of losing you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You won't lose me," she replied softly, pulling back to meet his gaze. "Not now that I know the truth." In that instant, Ryan realized that true love was indeed built on honesty and shared struggles. The walls he had built around himself crumbled as he embraced Sarah, both of them understanding that their journey together was only just beginning. As they stood there, surrounded by the sterile environment of the hospital, he felt a sense of peace. The path ahead would not be easy, but they would face it together, hand in hand, heart to heart.